Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show with me, Kavita Thapliyal. Starting a mutual fund for your child no longer requires the cumbersome process of opening a bank account in their name. Now, according to a recent circular released by Sebi on May 12, 2023, investments can now also be made from the bank account of the parent. Now, this new rule will be effective from 15th June 2023. What will the new rules mean and how will it affect you? Let's understand all of this with Aditya Agarwala, Head of Research and Investments, Invest4edu. Aditya, good evening and welcome to the show. Let's decode this circular. So far, what's the pattern of investment for your child if you want to adopt the mutual fund route, and what has changed in the circular?
Good evening, Kavita, and thanks for the show. So clearly, let's first get into what the previous circular was. So in December of 2019, SEBI came out with a circular which made it mandated that every investment in the name of the minor could only be accepted from the minor's bank account or a joint account with a guardian. So far, the circular said that if you want to open a mutual fund account in the name of the minor, you had to have a minor's account, bank account, or a joint account in the name of the minor and the parent. Now, after taking into consideration the recommendations of the Mutual Fund Advisory Committee, SEBI recently came out with an amended circular on 12th of May 2023, which no longer makes it necessary to go through the cumbersome process, as you mentioned, of opening a bank account in the name of the child to start a mutual fund. Now, as per the latest circular, which comes into force from 15th of June 2023, if the parent has a bank account or the legal guardian has a bank account, they can start a mutual fund in the name of the child, which is a very welcome move because the parent doesn't have to go through the process of opening the bank account of the child, and B, it makes the investment also very easier, and to track the investment also becomes easier. So the new circular which the SEBI has come out with is a welcome move and should help and motivate parents to invest more in the name of the child.
Aditya, it definitely makes it easier to start investments for your child. But then I want to understand, why was the process so cumbersome? And also, when you're investing through your child's account or a minor's account, there is some sense of commitment. You know the goal, and the goal is the future and the better future of your child. That somewhere with this new circular gets diluted. What do you think?
There are two sides to the coin, Kavita, to be honest. I don't think so. If a committed, child education goal is a very important goal. Every parent should have a child education goal. And if you don't have an education goal, you don't know exactly how much you are incurring. So every parent should have a dedicated saving fund, which they should identify the exact cost of education, and then they should have a dedicated education goal. And if you have a dedicated education goal, definitely you will want to invest. In fact, I would say this circular makes it easier for the parent to open a mutual fund account and start saving for in the name of the minor. Because we all know, if you want to open a bank account in the name of the minor, there are several documents you have to procure, and then go to a bank and open a bank account, or even if it's online these days, which no parent would want to do. And most of the parents will have a bank account, and it becomes very easier for you to then open a mutual fund account in the name of your minor and start your savings. In fact, if you start a savings, I believe in the minor's account, in the minor's name, you would want to continue with that rather than just redeem in case of emergencies, and there will be lesser withdrawals if you actually have a dedicated a mutual fund account or an investment in the name of the minor, which is dedicated for his or her education in the longer term.
Right. So, just to understand that if I've got this right, so for example, you are already doing an investment for your child, or maybe you want to start investing. This can be done through your existing bank account. You do not need to have a new bank account for a fresh investment.
As far as investment is concerned, yes, Kavita, you don't need a fresh bank account in the name of the minor, or you don't have to open a fresh bank account yourself. If you have an existing bank account, if the legal guardian has an existing bank account, if you have a joint account with the minor and the parent, you can start investment in the name of the minor. So, which is why I said this is a very welcome move, because it makes the process much easier, much smoother, and much faster. Today, if you decide to open an investment account in the name of the minor, you just have to complete the KYC process and you start investment immediately. Whereas if you have to open a bank account first in the name of the minor and then start investment, it becomes a bit of a cumbersome process and a long process. This is as far as investment is concerned, Kavita. But the moment you talk about redemption of the same, then you have to have a bank account in the name of the minor, and the bank account should have all the KYC process completed, and the money gets transferred into the bank account of the minor, not in the account of the parent, which is very important for the commitment of this fund to continue, and make sure that the goal for which you were saving is eventually met.
Anything that you need to intimate to the fund house?
No, I believe they should come up with more and more plans for children, because honestly, this is one area which is not clearly looked upon, Kavita, and we all know child education inflation. In fact, in child education is rising at an alarming pace. 10 to 12% is the basic inflation. It is the education inflation, which is way higher than general inflation. So I would strongly urge all the fund houses to come up with more plans dedicated for child education investments. There are a few, to name them, UTI, ICICI, HDFC have a dedicated child investment plan, but they should promote it more, and maybe more and more AMCs should participate in the same.
Asking you more about these plans, but then before that, I want to understand the taxability of such investment. Now, if you want to withdraw the money before the child gets 18 years old, what will be the taxation or the tax implemented, and post 18, what will be the tax liability?
Important topic to cover as well, as far as taxability is concerned. So if the child is still a minor, hasn't turned 18, and if you redeem the funds, then it is taxable in the hands of the parents. And if the investment is redeemed after the age of 18, then it is a tax in the hands of the children, because clearly the funds is now transferred to the child after the child turns a major from a minor, and taxability then lies in the hands of the child, not the parent.
This entire process of transferring, now when the child gets 18 and above, how do you transfer this entire ownership to the child then?
It's not a very cumbersome process, Kavita. It is very easy, because you are saving for the child, and there's a dedicated fund for which you are saving. So the moment child turns 18, you have a bank account for the child, which eventually you will open, because the money is eventually post redemption is going to get transferred in the child's account. So it is not a very cumbersome process. It is very easy. The funds get transferred in the child's name. It is in the child's name. The funds get deposited in the child's bank account, and once he or she turns major, they just have to pay a tax, which is your capital gains tax post redemption.
What about KYC? I mean, post 18, if the account becomes a major account, then you'll have to do a fresh KYC.
Oh yes, as you do in case of all the bank accounts, the formalities, you will have to have that in place. If it's already done before, then you don't need to go through a fresh process of KYC. That will suffice.
We are just talking about mutual funds over here, right? And all category of mutual funds where you're investing, not the specific child plans, or is it just specific child plans?
No, in fact, if you want to, this is specific to child plans which are there. If you want to invest in those child plans, then these are the regulations which are there. You can invest in other mutual funds as well, Kavita, in the name of your in the name of the minor. You don't need to specifically invest in child plan if you want to invest in the name of the minor. So there are a whole host of funds which are available depending on the timeline that you have. That is very important to identify which investment plan, which fund you are opting for. That plays the key role here. And you can go for a dedicated child plan. You can make a mix of dedicated child plan and some of the funds which are available, which are not dedicated child plans.
Let's talk about the options available when you want to select a child plan. First of all, is it the right strategy to opt for a child plan, or maybe just a mutual fund or equity investment can take care of your child education goal or anything related to your child?
If you opt for a child plan, obviously there are certain advantages to it because they are taking care of the fact that it is dedicated for child's education needs. And when it comes to child education needs, you don't want to play very risky there. You want to play a bit safe. Make sure that you're getting decent returns and your goal is eventually met. That is more important. But if you are savvy and if you have a bit of a knowledge about equities and investments, then you can opt, like I said, for a regular mutual fund as well. It will all depend on the timeline. To give you an example, if your child is less than 8 years or maybe an 8-year-old child, and you have your 10 years or beyond in your hands, what you can do is you can opt for a slightly more riskier plans, which is a mix of a flexi cap, a mid cap, a small cap, and a large cap, and you can bundle it up with a child plan as well. While if your child is already 13 to 15 years old, then you can't take that kind of a risk, Kavita. Then you can have to opt for a child plan which is investing predominantly into debt, like an UTI fund, which invests 80% into debt, because you don't have that kind of a time and you can't take that kind of a risk as well. So it all depend on the timeline that you have, and the earlier you start, the better it is because the options are more available for you, as I mentioned, and the higher the returns you get.
Uh, Aditya, the child plans that you are recommending, what's the kind of exposure and investment strategy that they follow?
So they like I mentioned, they adopt a very simple and a goal-based strategy. If we talk about ICICI Pru, they have a mix of 50-50, 50% debt, a 50% equity. If I talk of UTI, there too you have a good balance of 60-40, 60% into debt, 40% into equities. Again, if I talk of SBI, ICICI, they too, HDFC, they too follow a similar kind of a pattern. So being a dedicated child plan, they have a good mix of debt and equity because you don't want to take that kind of a risk with your child.
Aditya, what's the return been like? ICICI Pru Childcare, Access Children Gift, and HDFC Children Gift Plan.
So all give you similar kind of returns, Kavita, in the range of 11 to 12%. On the upside, it goes as I guess 13%. On the downside, it is 10%. So it gives you similar kind of return, 10 to 13%. And if you want to include mutual funds which are not dedicated child plans, then you can look at slightly higher returns. But as far as child dedicated mutual fund plans are concerned, they give you a return of around 10 to 11% on an average. CAGR returns I'm talking about here.
All right, Aditya, I think we've covered all the aspect of this important circular and the way ahead for parents who want to strategize their child financial planning goal. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And with
Pleasure,
that, we'll take a quick break. Post that, let's get Anand Ladha online and let's get your financial portfolio queries answered by him.